The winning blueprint presents
In the Lab Room.
While you're here, go ahead and sub up. Welcome, you are in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. Today we find out what's new in Indianapolis with the Indianapolis Colts. And this is a team that to me is under the radar. No one's really talking about what the Colts have done over this offseason and how they have taken that leap from the basement dwellers in the AFC South to second place and really knocking on that door in that division with the Houston Texans. And so I want to talk Indianapolis Colts football, what's new in Indianapolis. In order to find out what's new, however, we got to get rid of the old. But before we can go there, let's take care of a bit of business here on this program. If you want to see one of the three remaining teams in a particular order up on this segment, and we're down to the final three teams, that being the New Orleans Saints, Atlanta Falcons, and Tennessee Titans. If you want to see one of those three teams up next here on the What's New In program, simply be the first to leave a comment at the bottom of this video stating next and the team you would like to see next. And this video is being brought to you via YouTube subscriber Orbit Mint 4. We got the Colts in, and so we'll be talking about what's new in Indianapolis. Let's not delay. Let's get to out with the old in Indianapolis. So in order to talk about out with the old, in with the new here on this program, or any other program for that matter, of course, I need the assistance of not only my big board behind me, but of course, my handy dandy pointer. I've got both, so I'm ready to talk Indianapolis Colts football. And let's start with the out with the old section here. And I want to say this before I start. The Indianapolis Colts made a series of moves in this offseason that were really quiet. Again, much of what happens with the Indianapolis Colts these days, it seems, is very under the radar. No more Peyton Manning. It just seems like everything is ho-hum in Indianapolis, outside, of course, of their owner, who seems to be on Twitter tweeting all the time. Outside of that, this Colts team is like Rodney Dangerfield right now. They just aren't getting any respect. And so I thought that they had a fabulous offseason. Wasn't that enamored with their draft per se, but we'll see how that draft actually fares for this team. But I love their offseason. A lot of quiet moves. They didn't get any of those top tier free agents. They didn't go out there and went paper chasing after guys and threw a lot of money at free agents at the top of the food chain. No. The Colts went about it the right way, the smart way. They went and got a lot of different guys at positions of need. They filled a lot of voids, and they did not spend a lot of money to do so. And so they really maximized their ability to upgrade their football team in this offseason. I thought they did a wonderful job in free agency. They went out, and it was high volume. They went out and got a lot of guys, and they didn't go for the quality over quantity portion. They went for quantity, but it's not like they sacrificed quality in doing so. And so I really like what they have done in this offseason. Let's talk about the Indianapolis Colts, and we'll start out with the old. And everything's the same except for one position at the top. Head coach is still the same in Chuck Pagano. We know about the offseason and the season that he had in 2012 and how this was a galvanizing force for this team in Indianapolis, and that whole Chuck Strong campaign that was going on during the 2012 season. But he's still in place as your head coach. Same defensive coordinator, but there's a change with the offensive coordinator. And Bruce Arians essentially was your head coach last season for all intents and purposes. With no Chuck Pagano, Bruce Arians stepped up to the plate and he hit a home run. He absolutely knocked it out of the park last season. And I thought he was one of the best stories of the 2012 season. I mean, Bruce Arians, what he was able to do with his football team, nothing short of remarkable. And so he's no longer here. You got to know when a guy does what Bruce Arians was able to do with this football team, you got to know he's going to get a head coaching job. It's just inevitable. There's no way Bruce Arians can galvanize this football team and take a team. I thought this was a ragtag bunch last year. A lot of no-name guys, a lot of rookies, a lot of guys that maybe you wouldn't want on your team necessarily, but the Colts made it work in 2012. And yes, their schedule wasn't the hardest, but they beat some really good teams and they found ways to win. And if you haven't been watching me for a very long time, or you may not know this, I'll say it and I'll continue to say it. I don't care how you get it done, and I don't care who's in front of you. So what if you play a lousy schedule? So what if your schedule is soft? You can't help who they put in front of you. All you can do is dispose of the team that they put in front of you. And guess what the Indianapolis Colts did 11 times in 2012? They disposed of the opponent that was in front of them. You won't get any bad remarks out of me when you take care of business. I don't care if it's the 1-15 or 2-14 Chiefs. I don't care if it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't care who it is. If they put them in front of you, go get a W. That's what the Colts did last year. And so Bruce Arians deserves a lot of credit for what this Colts team was able to do in 2012. And he got a lot of the credit, and he deserved it. And the biggest reward that he got was the head coaching job in Arizona. So he's no longer your offensive coordinator. And so that's some big shoes to fill in Indianapolis. This guy was a huge part of what you did in 2012. And so you're going to have to replace Bruce Arians. We'll talk about his replacement in the next segment. But let's move on. Quarterback Drew Stanton. You look at quarterback Drew Stanton, and this is a quarterback that Bruce Arians was very comfortable with in Indianapolis being the backup quarterback. So much so that when he went to Arizona, he took Drew Stanton with him. He said, hey, this guy knows my offense. And I don't think Bruce Arians is delusional in thinking that Drew Stanton is a guy you want starting for you. No, I think he realizes that. And he's done something that coaches do often. He's instilled that confidence in Drew Stanton that, hey, if you got to start for me, I trust you. But Bruce Arians isn't a dumb man. He knows, hey, I don't want Drew Stanton starting for me if I don't have to. And he went out and said, hey, I'm perfectly fine with Drew Stanton starting for me if necessary. But I don't want that to be the case. He went out and got himself another quarterback in Carson Palmer. But Drew Stanton is a guy that he feels very comfortable with, teaching others the offense, and a guy that if for a 2 or 4 or 6 week stretch, if he has to play football, he feels confident that Drew Stanton can come in and run his offense the way he wants it to be ran. And so he took Drew Stanton along for the ride in Arizona. He's no longer on your roster. So that means you have to find yourself a capable backup quarterback. And I talk about this all the time. Backups are important in this league. Do not diminish the role of a backup quarterback on your roster. You look at running back DJ Kareem. This was a guy that came over to Indianapolis with a late bloomer, didn't play a lot of games for you, but did have one meaningful play, had a kickoff return for about 103 or 4 yards in a game. And so you get that kind of production out of somebody. It's always a welcome addition to your football team, but he's not a guy you're going to miss. He didn't help you on offense at all. He did have that one return for a touchdown, but you're not going to miss DJ Kareem. He's now in Houston. And so let's see what DJ Kareem can bring to the table in Houston with the Texans. You look at the running back, Mewelde Moore, and here's one of those versatile guys on third downs that you put in the game, can help you a little bit in pass pro, but is basically a guy that you want to throw the football to out of the back. Handing the ball off to Mewelde Moore isn't really going to do much for you. He's not going to get away from the defense and break loose for a 66-yard touchdown run. He's not going to change the game from that standpoint. But what he does is he has very soft hands, and he catches the football extremely well out of the backfield. So on 3rd and 5, when all else fails, you check it down to Mewelde Moore, and he picks up 6 yards and moves the sticks. That's where the value is in having a guy like Mewelde Moore on your football team. But after a while of having Mewelde Moore, you realize we got to be able to find a guy that's a lot faster, more athletic, that can do the things that Mewelde Moore does for us. And I think the Colts reached that level, which is what everyone does in this league with Mewelde Moore. It happened to him in Pittsburgh. It happened with him in Minnesota. And now it's happening to him in Indianapolis, where they realize, Can't we find a guy that's faster, a little bit more athletic than Weldy Moore that can do all of the things that he does? Sure you can. And that's why he's no longer on this roster. You look at wide receiver Donnie Avery. You resurrected Donnie Avery's career. And for a minute there, I thought this guy was lost. He was lost. He was on that milk carton. Have you seen me? And for a while, I thought he was going to fade into black because he was drafted. He was the first receiver drafted in the draft that he was drafted in. He was the first receiver taken, and he was in the second round. First pick in the second round by the Rams, and coming out of Houston, nobody really knew who this guy was. Just knew he was fast. Comes in to St. Louis, has an okay season, then he tears the ACL the next year, and never is the same guy for a while there. Goes through a little malaise. He's in Tennessee. He's basically going around the league looking to find a niche, carve out a niche in this league. And then he lands in Indianapolis. Solid move. Nobody really is talking about Donnie Avery on this football team, but he helped you a lot in 2012. He made some big plays. None bigger than the touchdown catch against Detroit to win that game as time expired. But I tell you what, you helped resurrect this man's career. He parlayed his 2012 performance into a contract with the Kansas City Chiefs. And that's where he is now. He's no longer on your roster. You have to find yourself another Donnie Avery. Go make yourself. Hey, you made Donnie Avery. You can make another guy, not a star, because Donnie Avery isn't a star, but you can make another serviceable receiver in this offense. You made Donnie Avery, and I think I know who you're trying to remake, and we'll talk about that here in a second. You look at wide receiver Austin Collie. Sad situation here. Here's a guy that, simply put, concussions. Concussions, concussions, concussions. That's been the story of his career, is concussions. And he's trying to make a comeback, but I honestly don't know how much football this guy has left. I mean, even if he were to come back, and there are some teams sniffing around Austin Collie. They're sniffing around, but I don't know what's there. I'm scared for Austin Collie first and foremost, because if he comes back, one shot that rattles that cage, he's going to get another concussion. It's much like when you tear a ligament in your knee or something like that. It makes it more susceptible to doing it again. And he's had so many concussions, and I just don't know if this guy should play football anymore. But we'll see. But he's no longer in Indianapolis, and it's unfortunate because the promise was there. You saw flashes. You saw what this guy could be. But those concussions, those vicious shots that he took over the course of about 3 years, they have basically derailed his career. And no more Austin Collie in Indianapolis. You look at offensive tackle Winston Justice. Here's a guy that started 3/4 of the season for you last year. And he was okay at best, but he's part of the reason why you went out and made some moves in free agency. One being that of Gosher Cherilus to come in and play that tackle position because Winston Justice wasn't good enough. And when Winston Justice is your right tackle, there is no justice. And so he's no longer in Indianapolis. Go figure. You look at offensive guard Jeff Linkenbach, or as he likes to be called, Jeffrey Linkenbach. And look, this line was very inconsistent. And part of the reason why is because it was a revolving door. Too many guys were playing on this line. You can't have continuity on an offensive line when guys are getting injured or they're not playing well and you got a revolving door. There are about 3 or 4 guards that played on the interior of this line last season. Jeff Linkenbach, the next guy. You might as well just lump these two in together. Seth Olsen. And these are guys that both were on the interior of this offensive line, gave you some spot starts. Joe Reitz also started at guard, but you just had too much going on at the guard position. Way, way, way too much for this line to be as consistent as you would like it to be. And both of these guys, Jeff Linkenbach and Seth Olsen, are guards that you felt like, hey, we can do much better than these guys. In fact, we can even do better than these guys as backups on this football team. And so neither one of these guys are any longer on your roster, and you're not going to miss these guys. In fact, you're going to replace them with better options at the interior position of your offensive line at those guard spots. And so neither one of these guys are any longer on your roster. You look at safety Tom Zibikowski. He was brought over from Baltimore with your head coach, Chuck Pagano. And Chuck Pagano had ideas of grandeur for Tom Zibikowski. Hey, this is a guy that played sparingly in Baltimore. I feel like if given the opportunity, he could play really good at the safety position in a starter's capacity. And Chuck Pagano found out very quickly, maybe I was wrong about this guy. Maybe Tom isn't a starter in this league. I don't think so. I don't think he's a starter in this league. I think he's a solid special teams guy. I think he's also someone that gives you value in being a rotational depth safety. But in terms of starting, not the guy that I want back there. But it took you a while to figure that out. You realized it and you admitted your mistake. 1 year on the roster, you realize, okay, yeah, probably not the guy I want starting at safety. You let him go. He moves on. He's no longer on your football team. He's now in Chicago. Good luck to him. Look at cornerback Gerard Powers. Solid corner. I like Gerard Powers a lot and what he can bring to the table. The issue with him is staying healthy. This guy never played in a 4-year career in Indianapolis. Never played 16 games. Started every game he played in. Never played 16 games, however. And so that's the issue you always ran into with Gerard Powers. How many games am I getting out of you this season? Is it 12? Is it 7? Is it 9? What is it? You never knew what the number was going to be, except it wasn't going to be 16. And so Gerard Powers, solid corner. I really like what he brought to the table in Indianapolis. Just simply put, could not stay healthy. He is now in Arizona as well. So you look at linebacker Moises Foku. Look, marginal linebacker at best. He's a guy that does not change the game at the linebacker position. Isn't going to make any plays. Solid tackler, not going to really help you that much in pass coverage. Just a guy that can help you in the run game. Not a very instinctive linebacker. Again, helps you on special teams. Probably don't want him starting on your football team, but in a pinch can come in and give you some meaningful snaps. But you can do better at the linebacker position on the inside of this defense. It's obvious that you feel like you can, and that's why a guy like Moises Foku is no longer on his roster. You move on to linebacker Dwight Freeman. This was a tough pill to swallow because the minute this defense changed from a 4-3 defensive look to a 3-4 defensive look, I knew that the clock was ticking on Dwight Freeman being an Indianapolis Colt. I knew it. I said, of the two defensive ends, this is the one that's going to struggle with this transition the most. Because I felt like when you look at Robert Mathis, he has the body type for a 3-4 defense. He can play the 4-3. We know how effective he was in that 4-3 defense in Indianapolis for so long. But I also looked at Robert Mathis and I said, hey, he's got that lean body type that can bend that corner. He can still be effective just as he was in a 4-3 defense, in a 3-4 defense. He'll be fine. But Freeman was the one I was worried about. Stocky, very short and diminutive. He's not that great in the run game. I can't see him fitting in on the outside at linebacker in a 3-4 defense. I just didn't see Dwight Freeman fitting into that role. And lo and behold, he struggled in 2012 at outside linebacker in that 3-4 defense. And he was being paid a lot of money. I didn't think it was going to be a good fit for him any longer in Indianapolis. And so you guys had a mutual parting of ways. He went his way, you went yours. It was a great run, magnificent run for Dwight Freeman in Indianapolis, but that time has come to an end. He is now in San Diego, is Dwight Freeman. And honestly, I don't know what the Chargers are expecting. They play a 3-4 defense as well. And obviously, they didn't get the memo that this guy isn't an outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense. But to each its own, they'll have to find that out on their own. So you round out this group with nose tackle Antonio Johnson. I thought that he was a guy that was solid in a 4-3 defense as a defensive tackle. You ask this guy to make the switch to a nose in a 3-4 defense, and you got to be a space-eating, double-team commanding guy. You got to be willing to take on two defenders, free up those linebackers to roam free and get to the ball carrier. And I don't know if Antonio Johnson is that guy. I think he's better suited to play in a 4-3 defense. Honestly, I think he's better with 4 guys on the defensive line and him being one of 2 defensive tackles, not him being the only guy in the middle of the defense. That's just how I feel. Now, Antonio Johnson, he's athletic for his size, but don't think he's the kind of guy you need. I don't think he has the mentality of a nose tackle in this league. And so in this league, when you switch from a 4-3 to a 3-4 defense, you don't have all the parts you need. You have to acquire them over time. It usually takes about 2 seasons to get comfortable in that scheme switch, especially when you're going from a 4-3 to a 3-4. When you're going from a 3-4 to a 4-3, it's always a lot easier because all of those pieces a lot of times are interchangeable. But when you go from a 4-3 to a 3-4, you don't have a nose tackle. You might not have the outside rush linebackers or guys that can drop into coverage and rush the quarterback. So there are definitely some pieces you have to find. And I think the nose tackle for the Indianapolis Colts is one of those pieces they have to locate. I didn't think Antonio Johnson was it. And I don't think you think he is because that's why he's no longer on your roster. So you look at out with the old with the Colts, and it's a solid mixture of guys who either found greener pastures out there and commanding contracts on the free agent market, and other guys that you just felt like, hey, they were left over and we feel like we can do better. They were solid for us, but we feel like we want to take that next step. We can upgrade at certain positions. And so some of these guys are out because of that. So we go from out with the old now to in with the new with the Indianapolis Colts. So we start with the end with the new section with the Colts. At the top, you got a new offensive coordinator, and his name is Pep Hamilton. Here's a guy that comes over from Stanford, and you're thinking to yourself, why are we getting a college coordinator from Stanford? Well, let's just connect the dots. Who's your quarterback? That would be one Mr. Andrew Luck. What college did he go to? That would be one Stanford University. Who was his offensive coordinator when he was there? That would be one Pep Hamilton. So you connect the dots, and it's easy to see why this guy was brought in. You want this transition to be seamless for Andrew Luck. You don't want this guy having 5 coordinators in 5 years. That's how you really tinker with the mechanics of a quarterback in this league. You look at all the quarterbacks that have been drafted in the first round that have struggled early on in their careers. It's probably not hard to see why they struggle when they've had 3 different coordinators in 4 seasons. They've had 5 different coordinators offensively in 6 years. It's tough to have any kind of continuity, any kind of traction in this league when you can't get used to one playbook. The terminology, it's hard. This league is hard enough as it is. Defenses are really good. Defensive coordinators are exceptional. This is the highest level that they play at in the National Football League. And so the last thing you need to be worrying about is switching up the terminology, learning a new playbook, trying to get familiar with things that you should already be familiar with. And so Pep Hamilton comes in, and Andrew Luck is very familiar with this guy, and I think he's going to come in and pick right up where Bruce Arians left off a season ago. And so I don't expect a drop-off in the offensive production of this team. I just think that now that you have a guy in place with Pep Hamilton, you want to try to keep this thing going. You have new weapons. You have more guys you can play with now. I want to see how they're going to implement all of the guys that they have on this football team. So you move on to quarterback Matthew Hasselbeck. Really good acquisition by the Indianapolis Colts. I talked about not devaluing the backup quarterback position, and I think they really addressed this the right way. You got a veteran, a savvy veteran behind your franchise QB in Andrew Luck. And God forbid anything happen, but you just never know in this league. You're always one hit away, one play away. But if Andrew were to go down for a 2-week stretch, 4-week stretch, Matthew Hasselbeck is more than capable of coming in and keeping this thing afloat. I mean, this guy is a winner. He can get it done in this league. And I thought last year the Tennessee Titans played their best football when Hasselbeck came in for Jake Locker for about a 4-week stretch. He had this team playing good football until they ran into these very Indianapolis Colts who went into L.P. Field and beat the Tennessee Titans. And we all remember the Vic Ballard stretch in overtime to win that football game. And that stopped the winning streak for the Tennessee Titans. And they went bottoms out after that. And their season hit rock bottom after that. But they were playing their best football, and it was because of Matt Hasselbeck. And so you're getting yourself a proven veteran quarterback in this league. And I think it's a fabulous move by the Indianapolis Colts to get this guy to back up Andrew Luck. Look at running back Ahmad Bradshaw. Love this move. This is someone that gives you an element of speed, something that you currently don't possess in your backfield. Donald Brown can run, but Donald Brown doesn't scare people. Vic Ballard can run. He does not scare you with his top end speed. Ahmad Bradshaw is a guy that when he gets loose, he's dangerous because he does have that element of speed. Not everyone has it, but he does. The only issue with Ahmad Bradshaw is he's always injured. And I can say this about him. He won't practice. He's got a nagging foot injury that I think is something that he'll always have. Won't practice a lot, but come game day, he'll be ready to rock and roll. You're going to get the best and the most out of Ahmad Bradshaw, and he's a competitor. Very fiery guy that's going to fire up the troops. When he's in the heat of the battle, there's not many other guys more competitive than Ahmad Bradshaw. I like this acquisition. I think he's going to help your football team. He's got 2 Super Bowl rings, so he knows what it takes to get it done at the highest of high levels in this league. You look at wide receiver Darius Hayward-Bay. Remember I talked about making a receiver a household name and taking that next guy, that next player that's lost and finding them, having them find their niche in this league like you did with Donnie Avery. Remember I talked about that? This is your next project here. DHB, Darius Hayward-Bay, a guy that was drafted way too early in the NFL draft. The Raiders overstepped their boundaries by drafting this guy with the 7th overall selection in the draft that he was selected in. And he wasn't supposed to be drafted in the first round. He wasn't supposed to be drafted in the top 10. And there was a lot of pressure on him to perform in Oakland. And this guy's a one-trick pony. Let's face it. He's got one thing going for him. Speed. And this doesn't change directions. This speed doesn't change directions. It's not going laterally. It's going straight. He's got straight line speed. That's it. And so you get Darius Hayward-Bay running in one direction straight, he can go really fast. You ask him to change directions, that's when you run into problems with Darius Hayward-Bay. And so his hands are questionable. He's a try-hard guy. He's going to give you everything he's got, but he's just not good enough in this league. And so it's your job to make him good enough in this league. There's your project. Good luck. Let's see if you can turn him into Donnie Avery 2.0. You look at offensive tackle Gosher Charles. There's another move made in free agency that I love. You needed a right tackle. You talked about Winston Justice not being enough justice for you out there at right tackle. So you go out and get Gosher Charles from the Detroit Lions. I think it's a fabulous move. He's a guy that isn't the best, isn't the worst at the right tackle position. He's actually getting better as time goes on. He's getting more comfortable with blocking in the National Football League. Sometimes he can get a little grabby, but I tell you what, Gosher Charles is a guy that can be a really good right tackle for you in this league. And I think he's only going to get better. And I think he's going into the prime of his career. And I think you got yourself a really good football player in the form of Gosher Charles. You need continuity on this offensive line. There's a guy that doesn't miss a lot of games. And you've already got Anthony Costanzo on one side. You put Gosher Charles on the other, and you start filling in the blanks on the interior of this line. And all of a sudden, you could have a good line in front of Andrew Luck for years to come. You look at offensive guard Donald Thomas. There's a guy that I'm talking about that can help you on the interior of this line. He was a backup in New England last season, and I thought he was one of those pieces that really held that line together. They had some injuries on the interior of that line, and Donald Thomas stepped in and played really good football. And guess what? When you do that, other teams around the league take notice. And the Colts were one of those teams that Donald Thomas caught their eye, and now he's in Indianapolis, and he's going to start for you at one of your guard positions. And I think he's one of those guys that will come in and really shore up one of these positions on your football team that needed to be addressed. So once again, Colts really addressing needs through free agency and not breaking the bank to do so either. You look at safety LaRon Landry. There was a guy that you had to spend some money on to go and get, but it's well worth the payment if he can stay healthy. And he was able to do so in 2012. But if LaRon Landry gets hurt, he's a guy that will miss extensive periods of time. And so the key with him is getting him to stay healthy. When he's healthy, one of the most talented and athletically gifted safeties in this league. Does he blur that line sometimes between clean and a personal foul penalty? Sure. But he's nasty. He's aggressive. He's what you're looking for in a safety in this league. And so I think you're going to be very satisfied with what you get out of LaRon Landry if he can stay healthy. Because if he does, you've got yourself a really good football player in the form of LaRon Landry. You look at cornerback Greg Toller. Here's a guy that, much like LaRon Landry, if healthy, you got yourself a really good football player. I love Greg Toller. He's long, he's active, he's athletic, he can make plays on the football. He's always around the ball. Again, it just goes back to the fact of, can this guy stay healthy? I think that was one of the reasons you were able to get your hands on him and wrestle him away from Arizona, because the Cardinals weren't putting up much of a fight. They didn't put up a lot of resistance to keep Greg Toller because they feel like this guy gets injured too often. And so if Greg Toller can stay healthy, you got yourself a steal. And this secondary can be really good if guys just stay healthy. If Antoine Bethea stays healthy. If LaRon Landry is healthy. If Greg Toller is healthy. All of a sudden now, you pair him up with the guy that you went out and traded for in Vontae Davis. All of a sudden, your secondary looks really good. And so it could be really, really huge in Indianapolis. If guys can stay healthy, you could really have something on your hands. And so we'll see how these guys turn out for you. Linebacker Erik Walden, another guy you acquired in free agency. Here's a guy that I thought would get more pressure than he has throughout the duration of his career. Don't think he's going to get pressure for you in Indianapolis. I just don't. I've come to the realization that Erik Walden does not get pressure on the quarterback that often. But what he will do is he'll help you in the run game. He's solid in pass coverage, a lot better than I want to give him credit for. And so he's a guy that can help you. He's versatile, but he's not going to do the one thing that guys get paid for in this league at outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense. And that is getting to the quarterback. I don't think he's going to do that, but we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this change of scenery invigorates Erik Walden, and all of a sudden he's a pass rushing menace. I doubt it, but we'll see. You look at defensive end Lawrence Sidbury, and he's not going to be a defensive end for you. He's going to be an outside linebacker, and I love this move because he's one of those guys that all the physical tools are there. You look at him and you say, man, 6'4", about 265, lean, can run like a deer, can bend at the hips. He's got everything you're looking for from a guy that you think can get to the quarterback. Now he just has to get to the quarterback. And so I equate him to someone like a Michael Johnson in Cincinnati. Big, physically imposing, athletic guy. You look at him and you just marvel at how this guy is sculpted, and you say, why isn't this guy better? And then Michael Johnson just turned out to be a late bloomer. The light just went on with Michael Johnson, and all of a sudden this guy is a pass rushing specialist in Cincinnati. He just got a new deal from the Bengals, and so that could be Lawrence Sidbury. This could be his opportunity to get things done and to resurrect his career. And I think maybe the Falcons gave up on him too soon. Right now, hard to tell. But he could be one of those late bloomers, one of those guys that comes out of nowhere and gets you 9.5 sacks this year, and next year can get you 13 sacks. Who knows? Or he could just be that guy that the Atlanta Falcons thought he was when they shipped him out of there and said, hey, this guy isn't what we thought he was. Either way, it's a low-risk proposition for you. Because if he works out, great. You didn't spend a lot of money on this guy, and now you found yourself a diamond in the rough. If he doesn't, you just let him go. It's really simple. So I love this. A guy that's athletic, that you feel like can be something in this league. You take a chance on him. Why not take a flyer? Why not? So I love this move. You look at nose tackle Abreu Franklin, and these are the type of guys you need in the middle of the defense. Now, Abreu Franklin isn't young anymore. He's not going to change the game at the nose tackle position, but he knows how to play the nose tackle position. He's a guy that you can count on to eat up space, eat up blockers, and really help your linebackers get to the football. And so from that standpoint, Abreu Franklin is one of those guys that's, I won't say he's irreplaceable, but he's a guy that you need on interior of your defense if you're going to play a 3-4 defense. Simply put. And so, solid acquisition. You needed a guy like that. I thought that Antonio Johnson wasn't quite what a guy like Abreu Franklin has been throughout his career. And so, that's a good move for the Indianapolis Colts. You look at nose tackle Ricky Jean Francois. I love saying it. And Ricky Jean Francois, I love saying it, is a guy that is very versatile. I love his versatility on the defensive line. Coming over from San Francisco, I think he's a guy that can play both defensive and positions and nose tackle for you. And I think that kind of versatility goes a long way in this league. And he's going to help you at multiple positions. He's really stout at the point of attack. Can also get occasional pressure on the quarterback. I just think that Ricky Jean Francois, I love saying that, is someone that is going to impact this defense greatly. And quietly, he'll be one of your bigger offseason acquisitions of this offseason. And I think by season's end, you'll realize the worth that comes with acquiring a guy like Ricky Jean Francois. I love saying it. And so, that's in with the new in terms of in trades, free agent acquisition, coaches. Now let's move on to draft picks. And if you're looking for an extensive breakdown of the Colts draft or any team in the National Football League's 2013 draft, I will redirect you to the 2013 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series that I've done on this team and every other in the National Football League. If you're looking for a thorough breakdown of each and every single one of these players, 2013 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series. So, you start with defensive end / linebacker Bjorn Warner in the first round. And here's a guy that you're hoping can get to the quarterback in this defense. You look at offensive guard Heath Thornton in the third round, center Khalid Holmes in the fourth round, defensive tackle Montour Hughes in the fifth round, safety John Boyette in the sixth round, running back Kerwin Williams in the seventh round, and rounding out your draft as well in the seventh round, tight end Justice Cunningham. So you go from guys that have a really realistic shot to lots to make this roster to those who are just trying to find their way in the National Football League. They just want a chance. And we're talking about undrafted rookie free agents. And so let's run down the list of these guys quickly and then move on. Running back Dan Moore out of Montana. Wide receiver Roderick Rumble out of Idaho State. Wide receiver Lanier Sampson out of Baylor. Offensive tackle Emmett Clary out of Boston College. Center Rick Smig out of Purdue. Wide receiver Jeremy Kelly out of Maine. Defensive back Alan Chapman out of Kansas State. Defensive back Sheldon Price out of UCLA. Defensive back Dax Swanson out of Sam Houston State. Linebacker Josh Maneri out of Army. Linebacker C.O. Prime out of Wagner. He sounds tough. C.O. Prime? I'd love to know what C and O stand for. You look at linebacker Caesar Rayford out of Washington. Linebacker Daniel Adongo. And here's a guy that has a lot of people buzzing. Daniel Adongo is someone that you got that's a rugby player. Never played professional football or any type of organized football a day in his life. And they look at this guy, he's 6'5", 6'6", 255, 60, 65 pounds, is lean, looks like he can be someone that can help you. The Colts must think so. They snatched him up and they're going to work with him. He's a project. And if they like what they see, they'll stash him on the practice squad. They'll work with him some more. He's very raw, doesn't know anything. He's a big slab of clay right now. And they just want to mold this guy into a football player. Let's see if they can do it. If not, again, low risk proposition for the Indianapolis Colts. You didn't spend anything on this guy. If you can't work with him, you just let him go. Simple as that. And rounding out this group, kicker Brandon McManus out of Temple. So looking at this group of guys, they're going to look to find a way onto this roster. And they got a shot. They got a shot, but I tell you what, this roster is starting to fill itself out. It's really starting to fill out with all these free agent acquisitions, these draft picks, and guys that are on the roster from a season ago. This roster is really starting to fill itself out. And so it's going to be tough sledding for these guys to crack this roster. Wouldn't be surprised if one or two of these guys made this roster, but not any more than that. Because I think the Indianapolis Colts are figuring this thing out, and they're getting guys in here that can help them. So Going to be tough for these guys to crack the roster. But we will see if they're able to do it or not. But that's in with the new now with the Indianapolis Colts. Let's go to any philosophical changes for these very Indianapolis Colts. So you look at any philosophical changes for the Indianapolis Colts. Let's start on the defensive side of football. Your head coach is defensive minded, that being Chuck Pagano. He's going to continue to overhaul this defense. And we talked about a lot of those offseason acquisitions, and a lot of them were on the defensive side of football because you're making that switch. You're still in the process of filling this defense out from that 4-3 defense that you had under Jim Caldwell to now this 3-4 defense under Chuck Pagano. And so it takes about 2 years. I feel like in that second year, you start to feel a lot more comfortable. And by year 3, you got it. You're officially a 3-4 defense, a bona fide 3-4 defense. I think this year you're going to figure it out. You're going to have guys in places that make a difference. Last year, you were just trying to figure it out. That's what you do when you make that switch. You got a lot of pieces that really don't match and fit into what you're trying to do, but you got to go with it because that's what you have. Now, after you've got a year under your belt and you can see what this team actually needs, who fits, who doesn't, you can bring in guys that complement your scheme, and that's what Chuck Pagano has done in this offseason, bringing in guys like Ricky Jean Francois. I love saying that. A guy like Abreu Franklin coming in helps you on that defensive line. You go out and get some linebackers that you think can help in Erik Walden and Lawrence Sidbury. You also look at some of your draft picks, and you go into the secondary. You didn't really do too well at the safety position last year, and so Tom Zbikowski out, enter in LaRon Landry. He's going to definitely upgrade your safety position. You look at a couple of corners you brought in, and so yeah, it's a different change, a lot of new faces, a lot of guys that are going to come in and help you immediately. And so look for this defense to be a lot better, but it's going to be the same defense, very aggressive in its nature. And I think that with the acquisitions that you have made, you're going to be stouter against the run. That's first and foremost. You can't stop the run in this league. You can't win football games. You can't be an effective team being ran all over. And so that's going to be the first order of business in Indianapolis. Tough, hard-nosed, stop the run. After we stop the run, now we want to get after the quarterback. And you think, you're not sure, that you have brought in guys that can get to the quarterback on 3rd and 7, on 3rd and 9, on 3rd and 11. You think you have the guys that can pin their ears back and get after the quarterback. That's why you drafted a guy like Bjorn Warner. That's why you brought in a guy like Erik Walden or Lawrence Sidbury. That's why you still have Robert Mathis on this roster. These are guys that you feel like can get to the quarterback. And so we will see if you can stop the run on 1st and 2nd downs and force teams to have to take to the air on 3rd down and long and get after the quarterback on the defensive side of the football. You look on the offensive side now, new offensive coordinator Pep Hamilton. And I think it's going to be a lot of the same. I do not expect Andrew Luck to chuck it as many times as he did in his rookie season. Let's face it, this guy was averaging well up over 30 attempts per game. I want to say he was averaging in the 40s because this guy was throwing the football so much. I mean, there were games where Andrew Luck had 50 plus attempts. I mean, his first game in the National Football League against the Chicago Bears, this man had over 50 attempts in the game, and that was not uncommon for Andrew Luck in 2012 in his rookie campaign. He had to carry this team. A lot of times, this Colts team was behind or the game was tied, and he had to take to the air and bring them back. And so you're hoping that this team can be out in front a little bit more in 2013, that you can run the football a little bit more effectively. That's why you brought in a guy like Ahmad Bradshaw to help you in that manner. And so that you don't have to put so much of the onus on Andrew Luck. He can handle it. He showed you that last year, but you don't want to put him in that position once again. You're hoping that this year on the offensive side of football, guys will step up and you'll be able to score a little bit more points. Put yourself in a position where you can run the football at the end of the game and you don't have to ask Andrew Luck to chuck it in the 3rd and 4th quarters to bring you back and win football games at the end. It was a very exhilarating year in 2012, a lot of comeback wins for this Indianapolis Colts team, but you would much rather be icing the clock with the run game in the fourth quarter than having Andrew Luck have to put together some kind of furious run to bring your football team back. It'd be much better to take 3 knees than to have to use up 3 passes to win you a football game at the end. And so we'll see what this offense is going to be. Pep Hamilton, I think, is going to come in and do a lot of the things you did last season, but scale it back a bit. Not as much Andrew Luck chucking it down the field, more handing the football off, and having this offense be more balanced. I thought at times this offense was anything but balanced, and I think Pep Hamilton is going to come in and bring back the balance to this offense because that's what they did at Stanford. They ran the football and kept it balanced. Use that running game to set up play action fake, which Andrew Luck is fabulous at, finding the tight ends over the middle of the field. Look for a lot of that to come in Indianapolis in 2013. And that's what's new in Indianapolis.
Like the content? Want more? Sub up.